I'm doing my first live in my new reiteration. Like I dinked around with it because I find Substack fascinating. But let me start out. Greetings from 3 miles from Solomon Northup's house. Why do I say Solomon Northup's house? Because if I talk about Jane McCrae, if I talk about Abraham Wing, I'm talking to a very small group of people who know who I'm talking about. If I say 3 miles from Solomon Northup's house, while my area don't know crap about him, the rest of the world knows 12 Years a Slave is written about Solomon Northup, 3 miles from my house. He used to roll out to Kingsbury. He used to roll out to Saratoga Springs. He's local. I'm local. So me and him, we grew up in the same neighborhood. So when I greet people, welcome from 3 miles from Solomon Northup's house, is because I grew up in this area and it took me actually doing my own research to learn about a dude whose house I drove past every day. That's the beginning. Welcome. What's up, Cat? What's up, Sushi? So I'm just jumping on real quick. I do a lot of listening. I'm not a news source. I'm not a heavy researcher. I'm a warehouseman. I'm a laborer. I can't stop my brain from running. So that's what I do. I run my brain. Politics is my thing. Why is politics my thing? I can tell you exactly why. Because I'm a wrestling fan. Everything happening in politics is just the same world of wrestling. It's kayfabe. It's narration. It's character performance. When we are talking about, for example, when the speaker, Mike Johnson, when he goes out to talk, he's going out there and yes, he has his talking points. What makes that any difference than the 4 horsemen standing out there and just letting Ric Flair woo as he's trying to set up for Dusty Rhodes? You know what I'm saying? It's the same thing. They know the end result. They know the reaction they're trying to get, and then they react to the action that they actually get in response. That's what they do. That's why I'm coming up in here. I just want to kind of introduce myself, level set. When I first started doing videos, I was just a dude. I had 1 subscriber, and she was my homegirl that I grew up with. I think it was a bot that subscribed. I don't have answers. But I wasn't serious. I wasn't getting serious. I just knew I was trying to do a thing. What's happening now is there's so much conversation and people are talking, what I call chewing on words, but they aren't saying anything, I mean, when the first Trump administration happened, Trump happened on the scene, we realized it wasn't just some paint thrown on the sidewalk that we had to clean up. It was legitimate demolitions and reconstructions. And in that, all the people that got bucked out one at a time from Trump world started a podcast. Boop, got a podcast. Boop, got a podcast. And then there's lawyers who are looking at this criminal stuff and they're saying, we got to explain this. I know this isn't the rule. And so they explain it. And then you have podcast. Survivors from Trump world, Michael Cohen. And I'm always going to hype up Dr. Allison Gill because that woman, what she did with the Mueller report with all of the investigations was just amazing. It was groundbreaking. Teams. What's up, y'all? I'm live on Substack. Y'all say hello?
Huh?
Want to say hello? I'm live on Substack.
Huh?
You don't have to do anything. Ha, awesome. Teens, you know what I'm saying? They get home from school, school's over. So the podcast, as they came up, they were expressing their trauma. They were giving their dirt. They were bringing on people who knew dirt. Here, let's share. We're past that point now. Now we've been through the process. We've been through the insider scoop. We've pared away all the polarity. So everybody's doing their specific niche conversations. In the beginning, I want to say like 2000s. You know what I'm saying? Like, I feel like I remember it was Mitch McConnell saying there's no need for Republicans to be going on public shows. There's no need, I think actually I think about it, I think it was specifically warned about uh uh Stephen Colbert. But the whole like that's when it started splitting up. And when you're only listening to certain amount of information, and I'm gonna get to a greater point speaking from this point of 2000. Um when you're into a genre, you're into a genre. If any of you guys remember high school prior to 2000, I know I do. When I watch The Wonder Years, for example, I relate heavily to Kevin Arnold's experience in the 60s. I wasn't there. I watched those reruns. So my parents and me, we took in the same info. I mean, I grew up on the Brady Bunch end years. They kind of saw it. You know what I mean? I grew up on Dennis the Menace, Leave It to Beaver, Dick Van Dyke, and God Bless America for Nick at Night, because that brought me Patty Duke and Dobie Gillis and Mr. Ed and all that jazz. It was all good stuff, but it was level setting. And so we all watch the same stuff. We have the same communication. I can name drop a scene from Dennis the Menace where he's got Tommy holding the table up with his head, and all the adults in the room, ha, 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 I saw that live. Yeah, oh, awesome. You know what I'm saying? I mean, we're part of a genre. And, I wrote a note about this earlier today. Civil rights happened, in the books in 1968. And then our generation, I'm looking at y'all like your names, like I'm speaking specifically to your face. Um, our generation was the generation that literally the intent was creating that diversity. You always had the red-haired kid, right? This is the diversity we grew up with. You always had the red-haired kid. You always had the blonde kid. You always had the brown-haired kid, and you knew he was the brown-haired kid, which implied Latin. It didn't matter Latin. Because he had the same haircut as the white kid, but he was darker skinned. That's how you knew he was the Latin kid and not the black kid who always had the tight little fro. 70s, right? That was diversity. The redheaded kid always had the glasses of some sort, you know what I mean? So they squeezed so many. You'd always have the episode where somebody had crutches, you know what I mean? You always had the episode with the bad dudes who would come in and they'd be rough. But the essential core that the good kids were the diverse group you grew up with. I mean, fuck, the shirt tails. You know what I'm saying? As we grew up, the diversity went wild. You know what I'm saying? The 80s turned into the 90s. So like, when I was in school, you were a jock, you were a nerd, you were a geek, you were popular, you were rich. You know what I mean? Isn't that basically what the John Hughes films are? You know what I'm saying? Shuffling us out. But then I always cite the Judgment Day soundtrack. Why do I cite the Judgment Day soundtrack? Because I was a rap head. I had friends that were into rock and roll. I remember hanging out with my rock and roll friends. We were cranking Appetite for Destruction. It is still rad as shit. I can't believe 18-year-olds wrote it. But in the mix, I'm listening to rock and roll. My rap friends come in with my younger brother. Man, you're not down. And I'm like, oh my God, I'm not down. But I mean, still the same dude, same friends. We still spent the night at people's houses. So back to the Judgment Night soundtrack. That was when you had your rock bands and they were jamming with the rap band and they gave it that hybrid permission slip. That was the era of Limp Bizkit. That was the era of, like House of Pain, Soundgarden. You know what I mean? I still get hype whenever I hear Chuck D talking about mixing it up with Anthrax. Shit. One of my favorite things that Chuck D said, I was listening to him one day and he's talking about his favorite thing. He goes, you don't understand the impact of our music until you're in Europe with U2 on stage, just watching this miles of people. And I'm thinking in my head, this guy got booed off the stage in the Latin Quarter in Harlem the first time they went public. And he's standing in front of this miles wide crowd. You know what I'm saying? In Europe on a tour with U2, epic, two genres mixed. That's the diversity of the 90s. I grew up watching Bill Cosby. So through watching Bill Cosby, I grew up in Hillman. You know what I'm saying? I grew up watching black men who were highly intelligent razz each other for having opposing education, something that is, as I'm finding out now in my adulthood, a very, very cultural thing because I've kind of made the movement from corporate media, legacy media, access media. And I started going towards a more survivor centric version of taking in news. So I'm listening to Black Star Media. I'm listening to Roland Martin. I'm listening to Greg Carr. At one point in my day, every day, I get some Karen Hunter. At one point in my day, every day, I get some Larry Daniel Favors. I subscribe to Amanda Seales on Patreon. She's a cottage industry. She isn't a news source. I genuinely look to her like a mentor. You know, I mean, I mentor, I feel, after Allison Gill, because when she talks, I'm like, yo, me too. So I don't need to input that. But when I'm interacting with Amanda Seales Media, I just realized I got her book too. That's this one right here. What would the ancestors say? Amanda Seales, Miss Amanda Seales. Um, you know, like she was thinking about what it is. Anyway, I always want to push her product because Amanda Seales is the person that revolutionized me. I mean, I read the book Black AF History by Michael Harriot. Blew my mind. It's American history without white people. And I spent more time going, like Alf, because I kept having epiphanies. I understand madness. It isn't that dude is crazy. He's getting it all of a sudden. You know what I'm saying? So back to the cultural split. I was radicalized by Amanda Seales. I watched her Jubilee Surrounded, and she says, "Hey, you will speak to me as if I'm your mother. Look me up." I get that. I'm a laborer. I'm a basic hominin. I look human. I am human. I'm French, Italian, Scotch, Irish. French, Italian, Scotch, Irish. Yeah, that's me. You can go to any gas station and see somebody that looks exactly like this. I drove rideshare. You can find Puerto Ricans that got my profile. You can find people from the Middle East when I got a nice little beard, which mind you is patchy and lacking. But all of a sudden, people would start speaking to me in their Middle Eastern dialect, and I'd be like, "I'm sorry, Bo. You're likely to find me like out back throwing shit away in the dumpster than you are gonna find me speaking your language." Back to diversity. I digress. I do it a lot. What happened in the 2000s? You chose your thing. And then, Fox, CNN was kind of the middle. I'd always be like, Wolf, really? Lou Dobbs, I cracked out on CNN. That used to be my jam. And then MSNBC became the progressive joint. And when MSNBC became the progressive joint, people just started to set it and forget it. They became our friends. I watched Don Imus turn into Morning Joe. And man, I tell you what, that was a pimp. It was a small table. Hey, actually, now I think about it, John, my flywheel isn't catching, but the guy that wrote 12 Years a Slave was actually initially, not wrote, produced the movie. John, it'll come to me. My peripheral thought will catch it. Anyway, it was Mika, it was Joe, it was John, what's his name? And I feel like there was another person, maybe not. But anyway, it was a small table. There was a bunch of newspapers on it, and it was awesome. You had the bumpers from music that would play. I remember, and this is the first time I recognized the Hollies, where that guitar starts, and Joe looked like he took that one hit in Train Spotting that sends Homeboy flying, and he looked like that. He goes, oh, the Hollies, and he gushed about that song, and I was like, this is awesome. Morning Joe was epic. It was innovative. Rachel Maddow was epic. She was innovative. She changed the entire newsroom. I followed her. I used to watch her stuff on YouTube going back to CNN. When I was watching her on CNN, the first time I saw her, she was Tucker Carlson's sparring partner in a debate on the Tucker Carlson show. And at the end, they had like boom, 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 15 seconds. And it was epic. I was like, this woman is freaking amazing. She's counterbalancing this guy, Tucker Carlson, who wasn't our Tucker Carlson now. And she amazed me. So I was like, at the time, the internet was very wild, not a lot, it's paltry. So I found what I could. And I'm like on YouTube, this is like, after 2005. I'm listening to 2006. I'm listening to her when she was doing radio stations in Massachusetts, like during the traffic and shit. That's how far I followed Rachel Maddow into where she is now. Now when she writes a book, I read it. When she releases a podcast, I crack out on it. When she has a show, I watch clips. I used to be a dedicated 9 o'clock. If I wasn't listening, I was watching. Not anymore. MSNBC has nothing to offer. CNN has nothing to offer. What those shows do is they give you the illusion of having a progressive outlet, when in reality, they're narrating it down. I'm going to give you a parallel. In the 60s, we were taught that the civil rights movement was very respectable. It was very passive. No, that's what we were taught in public school. In reality, Black folks were starting to arm themselves. Black folks were starting to come together in organized groups. Like right now, what are taking over ICE and taking over America, those kind of domestic terrorist groups, Black folks were arming themselves against the American government. Well, as a matter of fact, 1985, I don't know. I only heard about it from Questlove on Questlove Supreme, my dude. But he was talking about in Philly, they bombed a whole neighborhood where people were just it was Black folks. They killed kids. They were just trying to be independent and not be part of the machine. Here we are. So in the 90s, I grew up watching Bill Cosby. I grew up watching rap music. You know what I mean? Disco turned into the cypher, which was not intended for us as white people. The cypher was part of the 5% culture, was an extension of Muslim culture, which had nothing to do with me watching Robbie Van Winkle tell me, word to my mother, I'm out of here. You know what I'm saying? I had no reason to be listening to Vanilla Ice speaking to me in rap code. The cypher is not for us. By 2026, it's spilled, it's all part of us. And now, without understanding, we keep repeating the same stuff. The 90s opened us up. The 80s opened us up. The 90s opened us more. My era did not have a revolution. It did not have a rebellion, because in the 80s, they realized that the rebellion of the 60s, that counter-revolution, was marketable. And so my era identity was the cash cow. You get your Claire's Boutique for the quirky stuff, the Blossoms. You get the Spencers for the funny shirts. You get the Hot Topic for the chains and the Jenkos and the edgy. Everything started being bullet holed, and that's what identity started being as. Even though we were given permissions to mingle our music, to mingle our identity in the 90s, it was all still, here, give us money. We want you to be you. Country ducks for everybody else, because I think that was the other thing. I wasn't into it. So here we are in the 2000s. They took the freedom of what was individuality, where now they're starting to pool genre. They put the politicals together. They put the country music fans together. They put the rap heads together. They put the rock heads together. They put the progressives together. They put name your brand, because everybody's got a subgenre. I have two friends, Joel and Vince. I met Vince on a political thing, and of course, in 2016, what do you do when somebody's a bag of shit? You go to their Facebook profile and look to see the content of the bag that is their shit. And when we did this, we both found wrestling memes, and we were like, "Fuck yeah, this guy!" So now we come together on wrestling. But they're my two Florida men. They say the things, like they still share masks of Joe Biden, memes with Joe Biden wearing a mask. Joe Biden's old. AOC horse teeth. And it's like, that's where you get your politics from. So now we have a revelation that everybody's choosing their different genre. This is me. This is me. We're not being them. In 2025, it got to a point where we're giving everybody only them. We've pigeonholed everybody. I started listening to this woman, Jenny Gage, Life Take Two. She's on YouTube. She's a former Mormon wife, trad wife, white nationalist. She was in Utah. I think she's in like New Mexico now. But her purpose now is to be a feminist and speak out about white nationalism. And this is where I'm getting to my point. We have subgenres. If you went to public school, you got a public education. Where I grew up, Burgoyne Avenue's right over there. I got signs about Jane McRae everywhere. I grew up in the Revolution history. So everything around me is revolutionary history, named after it, streets named after it. Um, as a matter of fact, there's a hill over here in Fort Edward, right by Solomon Northup's house. And as you go up the hill, there's a little sign that says this is where General Burgoyne's marched his army. That's how we were growing up. I'm in the Adirondack, New York. When every state fucks things up, this is where they're coming. We have two things that bring money here: second homes for rich people and tourism. It's fucking beautiful. Come on. So that's what we grew up. Jenny Gage is talking about the white nationalist group she grew up in. They were taught that somehow through all their religious stuff, they're going to end up on a spaceship and go meet the relatives. That's her end game. That's the culture she's brought up in. That's evangelical in the United States. I was dating a Seventh-day Adventist woman for, maybe about 3-4 years. She was going to college, getting her education. I was working with her dad. So, every Saturday I was in church when she was home. I literally stayed with them. I'd go home and sleep. And then every day was an event. We'd go to the William Miller farm close to Vermont, the home of the great disappointment, where William Miller calculated through his Bible, hey, it's Jesus is coming to my house. Come on, y'all. And they came, and they were disappointed. So I was a part of that culture, and in their culture as youth, they are very into their own dialogue. They come up with arguments based on what they can fathom, not talking to other people. So when I would show up, clearly tattooed, clearly talking like electric dog shit, they immediately were like, we want to debate, because they have their pocket full of shit to say. And the more they talked, the more I'd say, that's not real. It was awkward. But back to Jenny Gage. There's a whole population in America that doesn't subscribe to public school, public education, public television, and they're being taught something different. That's an echelon that's peeling away these gentlemen that are signing up for ICE. Same thing in Florida. They do PragerU. Where I live in Hudson Falls, there's colleges to the north of me. There's colleges to the south of me, hospitals to the north of me, hospitals to the south of me, hospitals and colleges to the south of them. Within 45 minutes, I don't have to die. I can get treated in many ways, in many specialties. I can go be educated in many ways, in many specialties. The way that we're starting to pigeonhole everything, we're losing communication, that mycelium, that brings us together. So when Jenny Gage is talking about this stuff, that's not my upbringing. Wait, what? They are taught that black and brown people are not human unless, that's why I like all the body mod that we don't understand at Mar-a-Lago. That's a trophy system for people in that culture. A woman is a trophy to a man. She's expected to dress provocatively to lure the men like a honeypot. And then once they get them, they're supposed to mod their body and decorate their meat in order to look as a trophy and adorn for their person, their man. It's all a front. It's all a show. They're taught that people aren't people. Now, I'm not just going to pick on white folks. I'm going to go to the other side. I learned a word called Sankofa. Sankofa means go back and get it. It's usually an image of a bird, sometimes holding an egg, but looking back. It's a Akon word of Ghana. Trying to remember. I'm not educated. I'm just smart. And that's where it comes from. In black communities, They have, like Christians have their Sunday school, like they have their whatever. They had finishing schools with Black education. I read Black AF History by Michael Harriot, and like I said, I laughed out loud at all of the epiphanies, even to the point where he's shitting on Booker T. Washington for stealing Ida B. Wells' shit. Way to go, light-skinned white man. You know what I'm saying? It was funny, but we aren't taught the same. I'm different. I want Black, brown, indigenous faces in every one of my personal spaces because I want to know what they have to say. I grew up Roman Catholic. I remember there was this one time in the Marine Corps, I was at Camp Pendleton and all the squad bays, or not squad bays, all the rooms are outside and there's like a quad. I had a Black roommate from Mississippi, Larry Smith. I didn't make the name up. As a matter of fact, he was being recruited by No Limit. He was going under the name Missionary. What's up, Larry, if you ever catch this or if you know him. But I remember gold fronts on his thing. He was the shit. Anyway, we had it. White dude from upstate New York, ignorant as shit. Black dude from Mississippi, crooked letter, crooked letter. I heard about it. And we went, our doors open. It's California. It's beautiful out. You know what I'm saying? Like July. And he's going, your people. And I'm yelling back, you don't get it. When you leave the room, I'm hearing it. These motherfuckers smiling at you are saying this to me. It was epic. And then all of a sudden it got quiet because we were done. We were tired. We wanted to go hit Taco Bell. It was a new Taco Bell. It still smelled new. As a matter of fact, that's when the Phantom Menace was coming out. All the Phantom Menace swag was everywhere. And we walked out our door at the end. Man, you done? I'm done. All right. We walked out our door, and there were more people in lawn chairs, had dragged furniture out to sit and lean, pulled together, listening to our conversation, because one dude from upstate New York and one dude from Mississippi were having that awkward conversation that the quad was hungry to hear. We aren't the mycelium anymore. We're being separated. But that's why I always come to Substack. On Substack, I'm watching WODs. I'm watching Black folks. Like I say, my day starts with a full camera of Black folks telling me their perspective. And then, like I watch the Mayday Network, like I said, Allison Gill. I always love Stephanie Miller. But we're connected and we're not connecting. And that's the problem. I'm going to bunk out because I see that the house is starting to wake up. We go to work by 5. I got to start cooking. What we do is we're missing our community. We're a whole bunch of individuals, you know what I'm saying, who are being sold individuality. We're losing our mycelium, the connection. Now, community doesn't mean going to a church. Side quest. My son yesterday, he picked up a Eagle Scout. It was like going to somebody's funeral and listening to everybody talk about how great that person was. But my homeboy's a senior in high school. He's an Eagle Scout. Listening to him geek, listening to him gush over his mentors and put pins on his mentors who shaped him. And then listening to those mentors talk about my son, knowing that this man has accomplished something. I didn't. Full disclosure, when TLC is singing about Scrubs, they are personally singing about Nick Guyette, the dude on the couch. Straight up. That's me. When my son was taller than me by an inch, I shook his hand. You think you won something because he did. Congratulations, you're taller than your dad. When my other kids get there, I'll do that, but I don't know if they're going to make it. Accomplishment is part of a community. My guy, as I'm listening to Homeboy, I was listening to them talk about the community that shaped him, his grandparents, the scout leaders, his grandmother, who was actually the combining force of the scout troop as they cycled in troop leaders that were going to stay. Community is what keeps us afloat. I always tie everything to my warehouse. It's my own. I come home, I get baked, I sit on the couch, I take in media, I play The Sims, and I get mad when the babies get taken away. So that's what I do. And I take in media and I think, I process, but I'm a warehouseman. That's my world. I work with about 100, 150 people on a shift. There are about 50 people in my department, and I can teach civics, I can teach science, I can teach community, I can teach, as a matter of fact, I was trying to explain to the big dog daddy in my building. One day I garnered a 2-hour meeting. I said, "Let's walk on the floor." And I used my system to explain the warehouse. And I taught him the pulmonary system of the human body, with inbound being the mouth and outbound being the butt. And that's why I explained to him, because I always punctuate my lesson with a joke, because I like to say something funny and walk away. And I explained to him, that's why the punchline is the asshole is always boss. Because if outbound stops putting things out, we ain't got shit to do. That's my big thing. So I'm closing out. What we are losing is our community. When people are saying your sources are bullshit, bro, I'm plugging into Ellie Leonard. You're not going to get a more solid source than that. I'm plugging in as soon as somebody starts speaking. When Waj starts speaking, I'm plugging in, because that's, I've started saying M'Challa. I've started, quoting things as haram when they're bad. Why? Because that's how my brain's interpreting it. My girlfriend and I'm actually signaling to where she sits on the couch when we watch TV. My girlfriend, when we're watching, we went from the Steve Harvey show to the Hughleys. Now we're watching Bernie Mac, and we got to finish it with the Kings. The whole time I'm like, yo, this is racism. Yo, this is sexism. And she's like, black woman. She says, can't you just watch the show? No, because I see it now. I realized my upbringing wasn't out. After the 40s, we were given the austerity of America. We're not America. You know what I'm saying? Even Italy, now I say that, Italy isn't Italy. Italy's only a few hundred years old, and it was a bunch of cities, a bunch of towns. They just kind of put it together and like, yeah, Italy, when everybody was just kind of forming a group. We're watching the Hughleys, we're watching all that stuff. I see all this racism. We live in different states. I'm talking about New York State. I got more fucking pine trees and horse farms where I live. And that's what I'm going to get. People in Utah aren't going to get my pine trees and horse farms. People in Memphis aren't going to understand cultural stuff. You know what I'm saying? Like Saratoga Springs, and we have SPAC, which is A, where fish comes every year, and B, I'm drawing a blank on Dave Matthews' favorite place to perform. He said so much. Saratoga Performing Arts Center, for those that y'all want a trip. We are so different. We are not one country. We're 50 states. And every state is a county. And every county is a district. And every district is a city block. You know what I'm saying? I live on John Street in Hudson Falls, New York. When I tell people, they go, oh. But then I say I'm on the good side of John Street. They're like, they have some nice neighborhoods there. We aren't one anything. Even in this house that I live. You know what I'm saying? Yo, that's what's up. But, you even think about Ohio. Ohio, I grew up, abstract Ohio. Ohio's Western New York. It's right there. I can see it. I just pointed that way because I know that's west. Because West Mountain, where we ski, West Mountain's right there. I can see it from my house. So Ohio is like Buffalo, Syracuse out that way. Buffalo Bills is my son's favorite joint. Hold on, I got way distracted from what I was talking about. We're different. Politics. Politics is starting from the conflict. When you tune into a boxing match, you don't care how they trained. You don't care if they spoke to each other. You turned on the match. This dude's wearing the trunks. This dude's wearing the trunks. Fight. That's what politics is now. People are tuning into politics. They aren't tuning into government. They aren't tuning into culture. They aren't tuning into education. They're tuning into conflict. They're tuning in to where the gloves are coming together. They're tuning in to when me and the neighbor across the street that used to have a Confederate flag would meet in the middle and have words. You dig? We're missing the community. So as I'm closing out, because I get long-winded and I take a lot of side quests, I want to just say, bridge the gap. Bridge the gap. A closed fist can pound, it can hit, it can withstand. An open hand can do those things too, by going like this. But an open hand can five, can shake, can help. We need to be the open hand, because a closed fist only leads to conflict. My name's Nick G. I'm a dude on the couch. If you're gonna believe in something, why not believe in me?